How you doing? How's everybody doing tonight? I think that's just become the intro. How are you guys doing? It's been a while. I haven't posted on Friday. I apologize. But I posted Monday through Thursday. So hopefully that's good for you guys. So the concept of marginal return is basically related to the fact that we want to analyze how much outcome we will get from an additional increase in a unit of input. Okay? And this input can be any variable, right? And so we're taught that, if you add an additional worker, you're going to get an additional, output up until a certain point, right? And then, because that's the concept of diminishing marginal returns, too many chefs in the kitchen, if you will. And so people will just start working over each other and be less productive. And so I started thinking like, oh yeah, cool, economically awesome, makes sense. But at the same time, I realized that this concept can also be applied into our daily lives, right? It's mostly linked towards change, right? Because when you think about it, right? If you take a factory and you have like 1,000 workers, adding one worker won't get you the results right away, right? Because sometimes, it takes a lot for a worker. It takes many workers to get a lot of change fast. But the point is that that additional worker will start showing the results for the company overall after a certain period of time. So it takes time to change, but you'll realize that in a month or two, that worker had impact. There was change. That marginal increase in the unit input had a consequential change in output. And so in our daily lives, it's like, what are we doing to get these results, to increase our output, except that in our case, we're not adding workers. Rather, we're adopting new strategies or new ways or methods to make us more productive. I think the way it works is you have to pick an area where you think that you're not doing too well in. Oh, like I'm bad at math, or I'm bad at communicating with people. I feel a bit overweight, just randomly, right? So if you take the weight, for example, that unit input that you add could be limiting sugars, for example. I see that as like an additional worker, if you will. Because you're increasing an additional unit of input, if that makes sense, which is the reduction of sugar. And so you'll start to realize that, while this may not affect anything in a week, like I'm not going to lose 20 pounds in a week by doing that, over time, you'll be healthier, I would argue. And so hopefully this makes sense. But in my case, for example, like today was an example. I have a math tutor that helps me out with like material, and I realized that like sometimes, because the lessons are an hour and 30 minutes long, I kind of zone out a little bit. Sometimes I'm not really present, right? And so I wanted to change that. I wanted to be like, damn, I want to make these lessons actually worthwhile, and I'm not just like throwing away money, but I'm actually getting something out of them, like for my own personal respect of time, but also for the tutor's respect, because he's trying to give me a hand. And so in my head, I just put that little change, like, I want to ask 3 questions today to make sure I understand the concepts. That was the additional input. I altered a variable, an input variable, to change my output, hopefully. And so that little change in just asking 3 questions, which is so easy, because when you're doing math, you have 10 million questions. At least in my case, I'm not a good mathematician. But like, I got so much out of that class, and I was like, damn, I need to do this in every other aspect of my life. That change in input. The beautiful aspect about it is, you take a theory that you learn in university or high school or whatever, and you apply it to your own life. I think that's the beauty of it. For me, it was really eye-opening, because all it takes is that little change, to get those results. And like you guys probably heard of the analogy of like, the 2 boats, right, who are going in the same direction, and then one just changes in 5 degrees, and then what you'll realize is that over time, they'll go in different directions. Like that's cool. That's cool to me, because I think in life we're all trying to find ways to become more productive and to change for the better. I just feel like we lack consistency, me included. We need to be more consistent, and we have to trust ourselves more, trust the process. Sometimes like we tilt, we go in the right direction, and then we're like, we don't see results, so like let's just go back. We just got to trust the process more. And remember that these changes are really minute. They're really small changes. I'm not saying like, I want to reinvent the like I don't want to reinvent anything. I want to change a little something about my life, because I feel like, in statistics, we learn that if we take life as a formula, right, there's variables times the unit output that coming together will change the overall output, right? Like X1, Y1, like things like that. And these are all little variables in our lives. And so ultimately, it's our choice whether or not we want to, add variables, take out variables, change the weight of the variables. Life is our own equation. You know what I'm saying? And so if there's a variable that you feel is negatively impacting the theory that you're trying to prove or the overall result that you're trying to change, take that variable out, change it, manipulate that variable, because ultimately that variable will affect your output. And your output is your life. I'm spending a lot of time on YouTube and it doesn't really give me much value. Like I watch a video and it's like, I feel good in the moment, I'm distracted, but I come out of that and it doesn't really give me value. So I'm like, why don't I start incorporating reading more? And I just found out downstairs that my dad had like 20 books, like a series of like about history, all sorts of, Italian history and things like that. And I was like, why don't I start just like reading 10 minutes a day? I'm taking a variable, which is reading, that is not part of my equation right now. I don't read much. And I'm adding it, and then I'm adding a little weight to it, which is that 10 minutes. And then hopefully, like what I would assume is that once I start reading, I start learning a bit more about new things, and I actually do stuff with my time. And hopefully I'll become more aware culturally about the things that went on in this country throughout the course of life. And yeah, it's just cool to experiment, and it's good to add variables into that equation that actually result in positive change to your life, because time is valuable, right? And I'm the first one to say it because I waste a lot of it, and I'm talking about in my free time. So that's just the thought. Like, man, this sounds so philosophical, and oh man, I just hope I don't get shit for it, but like life is literally, you could see it as an equation, and you're adding your own variables to that equation from the decisions that you make. You know what I'm saying? And the frequency of the times that you make that decision relates to the weight of that variable. What you'll realize is, for example, bodybuilders or really good students, the weight for the variable studying or the weight for the variable seeking help from the teacher is very heavy. So of course, the output's gonna be there. This is just a reminder for you guys, but mainly for myself, that the output that we have from our lives is strongly dependent on the weights that we assign to each variable that represents that output. And linking back to the concept of marginal returns, these variables only require a very small change to see results in the long term. Because remember, change is permanent in the long term, not in the short term. You don't go to the gym one day and you lift heavy, you're like, oh, and then you get out and you're the Rock. You know what I'm saying? I hope you guys get a strong inspiration from this, from your week. It's never too late to make a change in your life. And that's it, man. That's it. If you guys enjoy this content, I hope you guys can take the time to like and subscribe. There's like 99.99996432446% of you guys that aren't subscribed. Let's get that to like 99. Make myself feel a little better. But yeah, if you do subscribe and I'll see you guys in the next one, then I'll see you guys in the next one.